and welcome to another episode of eDiscovery Chicks, the podcast about all things eDiscovery and legal tech. Hosted by two gals who are recording this on a Thursday and very, very happy that tomorrow is going to be Friday. We're
Amen.
your hosts. That's Bree.
And that's Angie. I cannot tell you how happy I am. This week is almost over.
Mm-hmm.
It's been like a year and a week, I swear. But we would not want to have it any other way but to end our week with our flock because we love you guys. We're continuing along our Playbook series. We are now in part 3. So, hint, hint, if you missed the first 2, you should probably go back and listen because they might be worth your while. But today in part 3, we are talking about mobile devices. Everything from company issued devices to BYOD, which stands for Bring Your Own Device, for those of you who don't know. But we'll be talking to you today about policies, how to deal with all the drama that comes with phones, and kind of give you some tips and tricks to get to what you really need.
But wait, before we get into it today, someone very, very special has dropped by the pod. As some of you listeners may know, because Bree and I have talked about it in the past, I am a huge, huge fan of an annual conference called Running Legal Like a Business. The content is amazing. I have nothing but amazing things to say about it. And we are so lucky to be joined by the one and only creator of that conference, Connie Brenton. Connie, welcome to
Yay!
the pod.
I am so excited to be here. You two are two of my very favorite people in eDiscovery.
Thanks for being here, Connie. I mean, if we have a loyal flock out there, which I know we do, you've heard us talk about Connie in other episodes. She is also responsible for legalops.com events that you will see popping up all over the nation. The Running Legal Like a Business conference has also been referred to as ConnieCon. So if you've heard that,
Oh my
that
goodness.
this is the famous Connie. So thank you for dropping by, Connie. We are getting stoked to come out to Vegas next month.
We are so excited that you are going to have a podcast from the floor. I would encourage everybody to stop by and talk to you while they're at the conference.
Connie, I would love to have you share with our listeners how did RLLB come about? What's it all about? And who should attend?
So, running your legal like a business is all about running legal like a business. It primarily focuses on executives from legal operations. However, as this role becomes more and more central, we have included the entire legal ecosystem. We will have tracks for litigation ops and IP ops and a general counsel track and an AI track in addition to the legal operations tracks. One of the other things that we added this year that I think is spectacular is a series of workshops on Tuesday before this conference starts and also again on Friday. And you can take a workshop on anything from how to create an agent and get some hands-on AI training to building your brand through LinkedIn, the caliper testing with Dr. Larry Richard, the Horizon, the Women and Allies organization. Barb Wade is having a workshop on executive coaching. So there's something there for everybody.
And you are known for having the most amazing content. And I hear this all throughout the year, that this is the place to be in September. And I know personally, because I've been to several of your events, how thoughtful you, Connie, are and your team is in putting together content for real life folks that are working legal ops or any type of legal tech or e-discovery adjacent role. So I'm curious, just to get a little personal, because I don't know if anybody's ever asked you some personal questions, but I'm curious, like, what gave you this passion to do this? And I know just from my own experience in doing things, you do it so well, which means that you care about it a lot. And so I'm curious what it is that makes you want to care so much.
You hit it right on the head. I do care about this community so much. And that is what drives almost all of our activities. So we talk about content, but equally as important is the collaboration and the community that we have built. This is a really tough role. Legal operations is a tough role. We are constantly dealing with change management. And people pushing up and back against us. And so it's important that we have a supportive community that we can turn to, not only to gain some insight into new technologies or new processes or what is AI doing, but also to talk with people who are in the same situation and who are driving forward a role that has been really non-existent for most of the lifeline of legal. It's a relatively new role. And so everybody who is participating in this space is a little bit of a crusader. And we really need one another in order to be successful in our roles.
I've found that your conference does a really amazing job of encouraging this really sort of like cross organizational collaboration. There's no hierarchy there. It's not like, oh, if you're not a lawyer, your voice won't be valued. You really pull people from all walks of life and all different companies. What are some of the organizations that people can expect to see there?
We'll have a number of large corporations, the Disney, the Exxon, the Mercedes Benz. And we also have those on the other end of the spectrum, the small, medium size. In fact, we have two communities representing both extremes. And then, of course, we have the middle. This is an opportunity for the people who have been meeting throughout the year, the TLC community, for example, for the small and medium sized businesses to get together in person. So we've been online for a year. Now we get to actually see each other in person. And same thing, we have a community called the Council of the largest companies in the world and the heads of legal operations there. The other thing that I think, Angie, you're alluding to is we do need everybody in the entire legal ecosystem here because still the only place to get trained in legal operations is on the job. And
Mhm.
so we have those who are just starting in their careers, and then we have a whole group that is dedicated to bringing those who are new into the community in and up to speed. There's a real sense of giving and caring about each other's careers, whether you've been in it for 10 or 20 years or whether you've just started.
I learn so much every time I go to one of your events because there is a very big spirit and intent to share and to learn with one another. And it reminds me a lot of the eDiscovery community because, like you said, legal ops is kind of a
Yeah.
trailblazing opportunity right now. And that's where eDiscovery was not that long ago. And
Yeah.
because you start in that way, I think that it lends itself to a place of let's pitch in and help each other out. And it's been so much fun to see that in eDiscovery, and it's great to see in at Legal Ops as well. I'm curious if you'll share details with our flock as to the dates and the location, and if they're interested in finding out more information, where they might go.
You can find all of this information out at legalops.com and click on the Running Legal Like a Business conference. It is September 8th through the 11th at the Fountain Blue in Las Vegas. And the beauty of the Fountain Blue is it is a brand new hotel. And we're such a big conference that even when the day ends, almost everybody in the hotel are us. And so you will be running into friends for after hour drinks. And as you get back up to your room at night, you'll be running into friends all over the hotel.
Bree and I are going to be there. We're going to be chicks in the wild, your eyes and ears on the ground of Running Legal Like a Business 2026.
Connie, thank you so much for dropping by. We appreciate you stopping in and letting us know what's going on with the conference, and hopefully, we'll see a lot of our flock there.
Thanks for the sweet and kind invitation. See you in a couple weeks.
See you in a few weeks. Bye.
Before we move on to part three of our Playbook series, Angie, what exactly has been going down with you that you're all stressing out this week?
Man, I guess it's two things. Number one, I've been solo parenting. Number two, I'm having too much fun. Um,
Oh gosh, I feel sorry for you.
nah, I don't know. And I'm like on top of this, just slammed at work. Earlier this week, like on Sunday night, we were at a memorial. Didn't get home until like midnight. And then I had to like get up the next day and function as a real person. And then on Tuesday, I was like, you know, it'd be great is if we went all the way up to my best friend's house for dinner. My husband's very famous for making cheesecake, and it's amazing. And so we took
Which I have not had yet, by the way, hint, hint. So just saying.
okay, you have to it's the best cheesecake ever. So he makes this cheesecake and then like leaves town. And so I take it up to my best friend's house. We start FaceTiming our third friend and she's like, "Wait, what the fuck? Is that John's cheesecake?" We're like, "It is." And at this point it's like 9:30 at night. And she's like, "I'm coming over." So she came over to eat some of this cheesecake, which meant that like the upshot of this is that I didn't get home until like 10:30 on a school night, which is very much past my bedtime.
This is your you pay, you play rule. You know
Yeah.
what's waiting for you in the morning.
But we had so much fun and it was so great. And then like that whole night we got home and the whole night long, my cat has decided he just really wants to eat my hair. And so he woke me up so many times because I was just like Strider, like get off of
Tasty.
me. Ugh. Anyway,
I've had some it's so funny that you say that because I've had a couple of nights this week that have been a little cantankerous because the smallest little teeny tiny cat that I have likes to sleep on top of me when she can, and she's like a hot box. And I'm like sweating it out. And I'm like, dude, if I could lose weight doing this, I would be so excited. I would sweat off all my calories and wake up and be like, yes. But it is
Mama
not
took
like
a
that.
shit today.
No, and it's a pain in the butt because 'cause they're so cute and you want to snuggle with them, but man, it's terrible the next morning.
I brushed my hair this morning and a whisker came out of it.
Oh, God.
And I was like, well, this is foul.
Oh, we're old cat ladies, Angie, do you hear us? Like, our last episode, we're talking about all of our ailments, and now we're talking about our cats. I hear you, though, on being completely busy and having too much fun, which I guess is a good problem to have.
Well, all right. So let's talk about let's get into phones cuz like Bree said, that's the purpose of today's episode. But before we dive into that, it's time again for me to do some shameless self-promotion.
Uh-oh. Go get a
It's
drink.
on both of our behalfs.
I'm just playing.
But Bree and I absolutely love producing this content. Love, love, love doing it. This is our fun time, and we really want to keep doing it. So, could you, listeners, dear listeners, please do us two favors? If you've ever loved us, just do these things. Number one, give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whatever. Just go ahead, give us a rating. Give us those five stars. And then second, subscribe. Both of those things will help us keep bringing eDiscovery and legal tech content straight to your feed. And now to mobile device policy, company issued and BYOD.
Yes, let's move along. When we're talking about devices, like we've kind of mentioned already, most corporations will allow you to bring your own BYOD, or they will have a company issued device, or they will have some sort of hybrid situation. Generally speaking, if you're bringing your own device, most larger organizations will require you to download something onto your phone so that they have access to it. Mine, for example, has like a authenticator app that will split my work into one portion of my phone and my personal into another portion of my phone, which is really rude because when I try to go to my work thing and like download documents, it's like your administrator won't let you do this. I'm like, I'm the administrator. What are you talking about? But anyway, the whole purpose of that, which you probably know, is to hopefully keep your company safe from losing any kind of data, etc. And then you have company issue devices, which hilariously, the first company issue device I ever had was a BlackBerry. I don't know if you ever had one of
Ooh,
those.
vintage.
Yeah, it was kind of like a mini speak and spell from the 1982 or something. But yes, that was my first device provided by my company. When we talk about policies, that's usually the beginning of our relationship with our devices and work. You begin a job and you have all these agreements that they make you sign. One of those is likely a policy about your device, whether it is company issued or not. A BYOD policy is the most popular one because it's the one that's going to have to cover the company in its best interest of, hey, if you're doing business on our phone, it's our content. It belongs to us and we have rights to it. And you'll want to read that over. And when you go to work for a company, to make sure you're not signing over your personal information, because that would be a bad thing. But a BYOD policy and a preservation policy are two totally different things. Usually, that type of policy I was just describing is a policy on how you use your phone, who the data belongs to, that sort of thing. A preservation
Mhm.
policy could kind of have a couple of different functions. Like you might see devices mentioned in your retention plan. That's a policy that is created by generally a compliance function, sometimes a legal function in your organization, and it would outline how long the data on a device would be preserved for if it, like if it's business use. It would also outline if it was under a legal hold. All of the deletion would cease, so it wouldn't be purged while it was under a legal hold. And then you would have your playbook that we're talking about right now. That was the whole reason for this conversation. Within your playbook, you might have a preservation workflow of how you go about and preserve the data on different devices. I think that data on mobile phones is very similar to data on legal hold, where it gets mentioned in lots of different ways within an organization because literally everybody in the organization is doing something on their phone that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's also this tension underlying all of this because I feel like this is where the law and just human beings can be in conflict because, like you said, your custodian's phone might have photos of their kids on it, text with their spouse, what they searched at 2 a.m. last Tuesday. Your custodian's phone is going to have things on it like all of my wacky AI searches or texts with my spouse. So there is that stuff. But then there's also Slack messages that my opposing counsel is probably dying to see. There are probably emails that, are relevant to this dispute. If I ever went on site for something, I might even have photos mixed in with my kid photos and cat photos that are like relevant to the dispute. Nobody wrote like a real rule book for that collision. And let's just be cooperative about it. Just doesn't work in practice. So it's our perspective that you need an actual answer before you're standing in someone's office asking for their phone. You need to know what you're asking for, how you're going to ask for it, and what you're going to do if they say no.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of the whole idea about a playbook, and we've talked about this in the first two episodes of, is that we want to think through all possible scenarios. What happens when you have fill in the blank type of dispute and you have somebody who has their own device versus somebody who has a company issue device? What are your next steps then? And part of that is understanding control. Who has control? Who has ownership over that data? So, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 34 governs this. Remember, this is the portion that says whoever has possession, custody, or control is responsible for producing data. It's not necessarily ownership, it's all about control and custody. You don't have to own the device to have production obligation for what's on it. So, what counts as control can really be complicated sometimes because it all goes back to that initial agreement. What did Bree agree to when she started working at XYZ company when we had that BYOD policy? We should have governed in that policy what belongs to Bree, what belongs to the company. And if we didn't, then it gets super gray, super weird, and you're going to need some expertise. You're going to need to get your outside counsel involved, or you may even have to get the judge involved to have an order to provide specific data. If you didn't have a policy that didn't spell that out, or it is vague and you've got to talk about it some more, you could find yourself very likely, if it's a BYOD situation and you're wanting data off of someone's device who's not cooperating, you may need to have a subpoena in place after a court order is made so that you subpoena that phone. And I have seen that happen many times. And a lot of times, the way that this is done in an agreeable way, anyway, is to have an outside forensic professional come in and make an image of that phone. And sometimes there's some specific criteria that we're giving to that examiner about what can be pulled from the phone. And a lot of times that could be governed by that order that happened in court. So, I mean, it's a very much a case by case basis how this is actually accomplished. And it gets real sticky and real hairy. And you take a lot of risk on as a company because, in all the time that you're trying to argue and debate who gets the phone and how you're going to do the phone and what kind of searches you're going to do, you're trusting that that person's not actually wiping their device and that the data will still even be there. It's not an ideal situation, which is why sometimes companies don't let people have their own device. They would prefer to have company owned devices so that they have more full control, like an iPhone, and they control all the iCloud stuff, etc.
Well, all of that holds true. And there's a reason that you should think about this now and not just when you're confronted with the issue, because regulators have begun fining companies over exactly this setup: personal phones, apps built to auto delete, employees having entire conversations nobody was ever supposed to preserve because nobody was supposed to see them. The FTC and DOJ have both gone after off channel messaging as early as 2024. And the SEC and CFTC each brought their own cases on that exact same theory. And DOJ's latest word on evaluating compliance programs from September 2024 flat out asks whether your program even accounts for personal devices and this is the critical part, disappearing messages. But Bree, what do we do about people that have already left the company with their device?
All right. So when an employee leaves the organization, it can bring on a life all of its own that gets even more hairy because now they're not scared of what happens if they're a wrongdoer, right? They already left. They don't care if you get mad at them. They don't care if you get in trouble. They're on to their next job, right? A lot of times when I have seen things go awry, it is just in this situation, especially if the person who is leaving is the wrongdoer. There's a lot of oopsies. Oopsie, I accidentally wiped it. Oopsie, accidentally ran over it with my car. Oopsie, forgot the pen. A
Jogging
lot.
homework.
Right. There's a lot of crazy things that happen. So, when somebody leaves your organization, it's good to cover that within your playbook and think about things like, hey, what are we going to do when HR is the one that's having the exit interview and they actually get the phone first? We need to have a chain of custody completed. And what should that entail? Should we have them open the phone with facial recognition or thumbprint recognition? Or do we need their PIN number? What needs to happen in that scenario so that we can access the phone? What needs to happen next? Does it stay on? Does it stay off? Are there certain instructions that we then give to IT? We change the password and we record everything and then power it down? Like, what do we need to do? And I'll tell you right now, if you are a legal practitioner, I highly suggest that you do not decide what you need to do next on your own. I highly recommend that you talk to an IT professional if it's a company device, certainly within your own company, and or a forensics professional to ask their advice on what needs to happen, and also make sure that you are asking for different types of devices. What happens if I have an iPhone? What happens if I have an Android? So that you can have it all mapped out. Also, notice that I just said refer to a professional. Who is that professional? Who is going to be on call? What are the prices that you've already established with this professional to do the different steps that you feel like need to be done? So
Whenever
having
anyone says, "Who are you gonna call?" my mind goes, "Ghostbusters."
duh, but have all those things mapped out in your game plan. And, I was mentioning earlier about how it can get a little bit hairy in trying to preserve specific data on somebody's phone, especially when it's personal. You can go ahead and think through a lot of those scenarios too for your playbook. When does it make sense to image the entire device? When does it make sense to power the device down and throw it in a drawer? I mean, hopefully that never makes sense. Hopefully you're organized and you bag and tag that stuff, but whatever. When does it make sense to do a filtered collection? And what are we filtering and what are we looking for? And where are we storing that? And what are we doing next with that information? You want to make sure too that things that on the phone that will go away very quickly, that may, like the transitory information that may be important to you, that you have captured that completely before you decide, hey, I'm just going to throw this in a container somewhere and save it if it ever becomes relevant, because that data is not going to be there anymore. Also, a word of advice for a phone that was destroyed. take pictures of it, explain in detail what the appearance of it was, explain in detail what was able to be done with the device and what was not able to be done with the device, and take pictures to document it. Because the worst thing to happen would be that the smoking gun used to be on that device and the judge is blaming the company for not accessing it when it was not something that could physically have been done.
All right. We're now going to move away from sort of the what you should include in your playbook and think about to the people part of this. What happens when you ask somebody for their device and they say no? And this actually happened to me when I was in house counsel. Like, there was somebody who was very integral to a bet the company lawsuit that we had. And he was staunchly opposed to producing his phone for us to look at. I ended up leaving the company before that tension came to fruition. But he was like, no, you will have to take me to court to get me to give you my phone. So I want to return to this idea of like, there's this personal device conversation. How should you actually have it? Because this is the part nobody really writes about. Maybe you have a custodian who has relevant data on their device and you need it. And now you have to go ask a human being, maybe somebody you work with every day, maybe somebody's executive assistant, someone who's already stressed about the litigation, to hand over their phone, their lifeline, the mini computer that they are all but attached to, the thing that their kid probably wouldn't recognize them without having in hand, right? And here's what I know from having had this conversation over and over again: the tone of it determines everything. You are not a cop. You are not conducting a raid. You are a colleague asking for help with something that is uncomfortable. And the more you can frame it that way without being dishonest about what you need and why, the better your outcome. So I often like to lead these conversations with what I'm looking for, not what I'm going to do. So if we need Slack messages from this channel during this period is what you're after, say that, because it's going to land a whole lot differently than we need to image your phone, right? The custodian's going to know what you're after. They're going to understand kind of the lay of the land, et cetera. And even if the second thing that, yeah, we got to image your device is eventually necessary, starting there is a fast track to somebody saying no. I mean, I think about that just myself, right? If somebody was like, hey, I got to image your phone, I'd be like, the fuck you do. But if somebody was like, oh, I need to retrieve Teams messages from your phone, I'd be like, okay, well, I understand that.
Mhm. And I think it's good to point out here, really these kinds of things are case by case basis. I mean, if somebody's accused of stealing something from the company, you might want to take their whole entire device and image it because you don't know where their wrongdoing resides. But if this is like a generic, third party subpoena and they're looking for, claims information on whatever, then you could ask the person, "Hey, this is what we need. Do you know where it might be on your phone?" And then just tackle that one area, and then it's not so scary as them having to confiscate their whole device.
Yeah, yeah, totally depends on the circumstances. I think too, like, kind of an important point to that, Brie, is like, give them dignity during this process. Explain what will and won't be accessed, what will and won't be done, who will see what, and be specific about the scope, because I've always found that people become a little bit more combative or resistant when they feel like the process is happening to them rather than with them. And so having those kind of candid, just like human to human conversations is really key. And, lawyers sometimes aren't very good at this, right? Because they're like, well, no, I need it. I'm going to get it. But I think you have to just take a more human to human approach. And in that vein, somebody may tell you no, but one no isn't the same as another no, right? Some custodians are privacy anxious, but still want to be cooperative. They're not hiding anything. They're just mortified that last week they asked Claude if you can actually ride zebras. Um, and so that dignity, something I've actually done. You can't ride them, it turns out. But the dignity approach that I was talking about a minute ago is exactly what kind of gets them to yes. So maybe they're saying no because they don't really understand. They're hesitant about where their data is going to end up. But other custodians, are genuinely stonewalling you. And those are not the same person. And so treating the anxious one like the stonewalling one is how you can manufacture a combative custodian out of a nervous one. So I think that anxious but cooperative custodian would maybe fall into like the evasive custodian playbook. But that's how you can, turn them, a nervous person, into a cooperative one. And if the tell isn't reluctance, if they're just stonewalling you, then you probably have a different escalation path for that
Yeah.
entire.
And I'd say too, make sure that you vet out everything that you can get out of a phone without even having to contact the person because you can subpoena your phone provider for information like the call history, for example. I mean, was there any history that Bree actually, talked to Angie in the first place? Because if not, then we don't have to get the phone. Maybe that's all we need. Or maybe there is something in terms of, you do have access to an iCloud or something like that because it is a company issued device and you share that information. Maybe you can get everything that you need there. I mean, I would say vet out what you can do without having to interfere with folks because that they get scared just like anybody would. I don't really wanna give my personal information to anybody because it's in a business, man. But I also more than that, for me, is, like, I don't wanna have the interruption. Give me my freaking phone, like, I need my phone
Yeah.
to do stuff. I can't wait for you to go image whatever you need. Good grief.
Right. Well, and I think too, like something else, we haven't really touched on this yet, but something else that I think is important to discuss in your playbook is the type of collection that you're going to do, like when and why and how, because they're not all created equal, right? You could do like a full image device, and that's very different than a more targeted collection. And there are pros and cons to both, right? So, like a full image device, is going to feel more invasive. And then you're going to have to explain to your custodian that, like, look, before a single person reviews your data, here's all the ways that we can filter it. But we want to do a full image device collection because if anything goes awry, it goes wrong, it's far easier to troubleshoot. There are like pros and cons to consider about that. And then with a targeted collection, yeah, you're getting a smaller slice of what's on their device, but if that goes wrong, troubleshooting might be much more difficult or require you to eventually do a full file system collection anyways. All of that costs money, time, different levels of invasiveness, and I think your playbook should kinda outline what those options look like and when one might be appropriate over another.
Yeah, and there might even be times that it's appropriate to make somebody sign an attestation, like, "Hey, we just need fill in the blank," whatever it is, like, any pictures you took of the car wreck. That's all we need, and if you could sign this attestation that you've done that and you're of goodwill and blah, 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 then that's gonna be good enough. And so understanding when that's appropriate and when it's not might be a good thing to understand as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happens when the custodian says no? They're like, "Hell to the nah, bruh. You cannot have my information because I do not want you to see all the bad things that I've done or all the crazy ways that I am." Well, that's when you get the court involved. That's when you might have a subpoena involved. That's when your outside counsel is going to be dealing with their counsel, and you come up with some plan of how this is going to make sense. Most of the time, it makes sense to have a third party investigator or forensic specialist to be Switzerland to come up with a way that we're going to extract data in an agreeable time to the person that owns the device. And those are the kind of conversations like Angie's saying, like being very upfront about this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to access, this is how much time we need your phone, blah, 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 blah. All those things get mapped out when we get the experts involved. But that's worst case scenario. I mean, sometimes, when somebody says no, it's more of a people problem, that Angie was talking about earlier. Maybe they just need to understand why it's important and you coax them through the process and allow them to participate in it. But more than anything, I want to stress document everything. Document everything you tried to do, document every intention that you had to go get whatever, document their responses, etc.
That's right. And, your playbook has to spell out that chain of escalation. So if somebody says no, who gets called next? What's the next move? And when are you looking at a subpoena or a court order? The worst outcome possible is an undocumented standoff. And if it ever came out later on that a custodian refused and then nothing happened, you have a spoliation problem, a big one. So hopefully we freaked you out enough because that is all the time we have for today. And listen, possession, custody, or control is not just a bar exam flashback or something designed to give you PTSD. It is actually coming for your custodian's group chats. So follow eDiscovery Chicks on LinkedIn and Instagram under the handle eDiscovery Chicks and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, please, please, please rate us wherever you're listening. And if you like what you hear, share us with your friends. And if you hate what you hear, share us with your enemies. We're trying to grow our listener base either way so that we can keep bringing you content like this. Bye.
Bye. The views we've expressed today are the eDiscovery Chicks views and don't necessarily represent the views of our employers, partners, or clients. The podcast is available solely for educational purposes to provide general information about eDiscovery principles and not to provide legal advice to any specific situation. It is not a substitute for legal advice from a lawyer you retained or who has agreed to represent you.